Thank you for the cross, Lord. Thank you for the price you paid, bearing all my sin and shame. In love you came, gave amazing grace. Thank you for this love, Lord. Thank you for the nail-pierced hands, washed me in your cleansing flow. Now all I know, your forgiveness and embrace. Worthy is the Lamb, seated on the throne. Crown you now with any crown. You reign victorious. High and lifted up, Jesus, Son of God, the darling of heaven, crucified. Worthy is the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb. Thank you for the cross, Lord. Thank you for the price you paid, bearing all my sin and shame. In love you came, gave amazing grace. Thank you for this love, Lord. Thank you for the nail-pierced hands, washed me in your cleansing flow. Now all I know, your forgiveness and embrace. Worthy is the Lamb, seated on the throne. Crown you now with many
Politics and self-defense. That's right. Thank you so much, Minister Silva. Hey, beautiful people of the beloved nation of Amazonia, dear televiewers, welcome to today's edition of Hour of Grace. Just like Minister Silva was saying, we have a full package for you. You know, last week we started with this series on the Christian, politics, and self-defense. And we discussed a lot of things. And believe me, today we are going deeper into this topic. We were blessed last week to have His Excellency Dr. Ikomi Samuel Sako with us, the President of the Federal Republic of Amazonia. And thanks to God, we still have him again today with us. And I'm so glad to have the President in the house. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Nanchop, Minister Silva. Good evening, all televiewers. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. You know, we started this series where we are talking about the Christian, politics, and self-defense. And last week, we drew a lot of inspiration from your book. You know, I count myself to be blessed and opportune to read that book. And I can't overemphasize that people should get a hold of a copy of that book because it's just so inspiring. And of course, this series draws its inspiration from that book. And well, I just want us to go back to some of the things we talked about last week. Minister Silva, I think you can remember some of the things we discussed last week.
Yeah, Mr. Nanchop, thank you. We were trying to look at who really a Christian is, and if Christians should play a role in politics, and which the president threw a lot of light with respect to that area, you know, of discussion. And I think we made it clear that Christians it's not all about talking about whether Christians should be in politics, but the thing is all about who truly should be in a place of leadership, which we believe that Christians should be in the place of leadership because they are the lights of the world and they have what it takes to influence the world positively.
That's right. And also one of the things we discussed about was how that book of the president relates Christian leadership to this modern day generation. You know, we had an opportunity to talk about why it's necessary for Christians to get involved in the ruling system of the world. For too long, many Christians have believed in this myth that as a Christian, you don't have the right to get into politics. You don't have the right to get into the ruling system of the world. With the ideology behind it, of course, that we are not of the world. We are, even though we are in the world. And of course, the president shed some light on that last week. and before we go into today's topic, I may want to give the president a minute to say one or two about what we had generally on last week's program.
Yeah, basically, the summary is that we try to situate the Christian as being part of the general society, and that when issues concerning the organization of society, the making of laws, the regulation of society concern, it is not expected, or it's not to be expected, that the Christian will be excluded. Therefore, that's why the Bible says you are in the world. You are not of the world. Of means belonging to the world. You don't belong to the world, but you are in the world. That's a matter of attitude. I try to underline that it has to do with your attitude in the world. It doesn't have to do with whether you should get involved or not. It's supposed to be your attitude. If you get involved, you should know You serve a greater one than the world. And so we also showed that it is the will of God. It's the will of God that those with character should govern over the rest. And that character is the most important ingredient in leadership. It is not knowledge, because knowledge you can acquire anyone. Even that's why you hear of evil genius. An evil genius is one that's very knowledgeable but lacks character, and because of that, he is rather using the knowledge to destroy, to cheat, and to oppress. But it is expected that those that have character, and how do you have character? You cannot have character if there's no transformation within. Transformation within is called is a character transformation. A transformation without is just conformity. Some people conform with outward show of morality by being religious and things like that. That's conformity. Conformity will make people think that you are okay because you dress in this manner, you go to these places, you do this during the day. But where there's transformation, that means beyond what the eyes can see, that person is governed by the conscience from within, not from without. Character does not depend on the circumstances around you. Where there's real transformation, it comes from within. So we try to make clear that those who have character are expected to be the examples. Leadership is example. If you are not an example, you are not leadership, because leadership is influence. So you have to influence people by your examples. Therefore, character is the best thing that I think those that are transformed within, those that are saved and transformed within have. And therefore, they should be involved in society, and they should be involved in the organization of the leadership of society, which is politics, and therefore make the society a better place. We will have better laws, we will have better organization, we will have better results, we will have people that can be trusted, not because of the police and the judiciary, the people that can be trusted because the fear of God within them does not require any policing for them to do the right thing.
Wow, thank you so much. Well, with that being said, Your Excellency, that leads us to our key topic of today. Dear televiewers, welcome to today's edition of ABC of Hour of Grace on ABC Amber TV. Today we'll be talking about, or let's talk about, democracy, and Christocracy. Of course, it's no secret to us that democracy is the rule of the majority, but this poses the question of which majority? A corrupt and evil majority, or a sane and civilized majority? Your Excellency, I'm going to bring this question back to you. Please, when we talk about democracy, there are several definitions of democracy, and we all know that democracy is the role of the majority. Now, my question is, why is it dangerous for the evil majority to control positions of power?
Those that founded the idea of democracy right from the days of the Greek, and I want to say even before the Greek, because right from the days of, even from the Bible, they thought that the majority will always be right. That was their expectation, that the majority will always be right, that the majority will always be sane, that it is impossible for the majority to call good bad and bad good. Therefore, rely on the judgment of the majority rely on the choice of the majority to govern society. So that's where I come in with the Christian thought. That what if the majority is not sane? What if the majority is crazy, full of junkies, full of people who call good bad and bad good? Then that's a crazy majority. Therefore, for democracy to thrive, there must be a moralizing ingredient that moralizes the majority. That's from the founding fathers of the United States was the Bible, because the Bible was taught, prayer was allowed everywhere as the way of life. Christianity was everywhere in schools from kindergarten right up, so that the majority that will emerge from such a society has a certain moral standard. And because democracy relies on the judgment of the majority. So if that majority is transformed, has a certain moral code and moral standard, they expect that they will make the right choices in terms of leadership. They will make the right choices in terms of the laws that govern the land. They will make the society will be a better place. But when the moral ingredient is removed from society, like the atheist movement succeeded in the early 80s to remove the teaching of religion in classes, in schools, and they made sure that it's even a taboo for you to teach anybody anything. For the individual is morally good. So you have a morally decadent society that has to make choices about leadership, about laws, about how to organize society. For that reason, laws that were passed 20, 30 years ago, suddenly the same Congress, the same parliament, but a new set of majority, they sit together and they say, no, that law was not good enough. We have to cancel it. A man can now marry a man. That's the correct thing to do. A woman can now marry. Those people who made the other law, they were not that was not smart. Now we make a new law. They are completely undoing everything, because what has happened is a change in the content, the moral content of the majority.
Your Excellency, in other words, you're trying to say democracy without a moral code of conduct is a person without a conscience, with no heart, no standard of what is right or wrong.
Yes, exactly. Now I know you read the book.
Because yes. I get what you're saying. And now, beautiful people of the beloved nation of Ambazonia, this is very important. I mean, this is a very sensitive topic. Now, Minister Silva, let me ask this to you. Is it the majority at a given time that defines goodness or badness? For instance, consider an example where the majority decides to vote a bill that the consumption of drugs or of cannabis, like we have in Holland, in some parts of the Netherlands or in Holland, is allowed to consume drugs, and some hard drugs, and sometimes you ask yourself, how did they come about the conclusion of such decisions? And you will know Well, there are many reasons to that. But now, my question is, Minister Silva, I just want us to really ponder about this. Is it the majority at a given time that defines goodness or badness? We are talking about democracy. Because if we should go by the rule of the majority.
Yeah, Mr. Nanchop, actually, we are living in a very crazy world, and the majority mostly today will go for what satisfy, their pleasures, and will not really go for that which they think is right, but that which can give them, temporal joy or temporal pleasure. So most often, right or wrong is not defined by, the majority, but it is weighed on the scale of principles. And the true principles in life can only be derived from the divine constitution, which is the Bible, to judge, what is right and wrong. And if we look at, this concept of politics, democracy, and, the different systems of governance, the founding fathers who were those who sat, in those days and ponder upon some of these things, like we had Luke, let me go back to a bit of philosophy. We had people like Luke, we had people like Plato, we had people like Aristotle, we had people like Thrasymachus, we had people like this guy Montesquieu. Those are the people that sat and look at how systems should operate. And they were talking, like in one instance they were talking of the separation of power, and I like Montesquieu's opinion when it came to the separation of power. He said that power must not be delegated to one person, and because each time power is delegated to a particular person, at the end of the day, that person is liable to, misuse that power that is invested upon him. And he said that power should be separated between the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. But that is not what catches my attention, Mr. Nanchop. What catches my attention is Aristotle's opinion, who said that it is not only enough for power to be separated between the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. He said that those who are in those arms of the government must have righteousness, as a standard to lead. You understand? Which means even those people, they understood that righteousness, is the ultimate when it comes to leadership. And that is why those who sit and, decide, over those that should lead them should consider these things. You should first of all look at the person and say, is this person, a righteous person? Like the Bible says, when the righteous leads or rules, the people rejoice. And when evil people rule, the people mourn. And so that is what I believe that people should start thinking when it comes to selecting who should be their leader. It's not all about, the majority deciding on. If we are just leaning on what the majority wants today, and then at the end of the day, we know the war is a crazy war, and the majority today will obviously go for what will not be.
Well, Minister Silva, I think your point is clearly understood. What I don't want our televiewers to misunderstand is they should not think we are enemies to democracy. They should not think by us saying this is like we are trying to raise some thoughts against democracy. No, we are just trying to scrutinize the democratic system. And of course, we know that democracy is a rule of the majority. But now, reading through the book of the president, I'm coming back to the president, and believe me, sir, I'm going to hit you with a lot of questions today. Coming back to the president, I want to read a quote from the book. Yes, sir.
Mr. Nanchop, can you just let our viewers know the title of that book again?
That's right, of course. We'll be getting that portrait on the screen right now. The title of that book is Let the Righteous Many Step Out. And believe me, as I've always said, I can't overemphasize for you to get that book. I can't overemphasize on that fact that you should get a copy of that book for yourself. Now, I want to read a quote from that book before I pose this question to the president. Now, this is just when the defenders of evil gain the majority by reason of numbers, sin becomes more and more tolerated, and the new majority votes the evil of yesterday into law as the law for everybody. Yesterday's criminals become saints overnight. This leads us to the next point, which is something the first time I ever heard of it, this word democracy, is from the book of the president, which of course I will give us the definition, but I'll allow the president to go detail into it. From the book, it states, democracy is the rule of an unethical majority for whom human rights is used as a cloak for unrighteousness. Your Excellency, it's not a secret that Christianity or the Christian values are the ingredients to true democracy. Why do you think it's necessary for the gospel to be preached in this modern world? And why is it dangerous? Or what's the danger for failure to do so?
Okay, up until 1973, the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatric Association considered homosexuality and lesbianism as a psychiatric disorder, as a mental, like as a sickness, as a disorder that needed correction. I mean, all the scientists of this association, that was the position. Why was it so? I believe that there was a certain majority among the scientists that looked from their value position and the knowledge they have and their understanding of nature, and they said this is a disorder. So, but towards that time, there was the rise of the atheist movement. The atheist movement rose from the 70s and became very strong in the 80s, succeeded in the 80s to flush out Christian and moral education from the schools. So what happened is that a new majority emerged that called what was good evil and what was evil good. And imagine that's the new law today. And so that is what happens when the moralizing ingredient is removed from
it's lost.
Society, because a new majority will emerge for whom anything goes. Whatever you like, Mr. Nightchop, they will say is good for you, so it's good for you. You are right. You might right end where your nose begins. So whatever you are doing, it does not matter. That is where there's no moral code, no moral measuring rod, no moral standard or code for society. That's what happens. Whatever the individual likes is his human right. So very soon, with this trend of thought, you discover that everything that is condemned to today, tomorrow, watch and see. Today we are only wrestling with homosexuality and lesbianism and funny things. Very soon, bestiality will be passed as law. In fact, in many countries, if this trend continues, you will see people marrying their animals, marrying their goats, marrying their cows and their horses, and making official and in official public ceremony that this horse is now my spouse.
It's already happening. It's already happening.
How will that happen? It will happen because a new majority just thought that yesterday's law was wrong. This is right. And then they put into law. That's it. It becomes the law. So I believe that there is an absolute truth. There is a standard that the way should be that should guide morality, that does not depend on time and circumstances. And if
That's
we
right.
teach society these things, that society will hold up to that standard. And that is what will guide their values and their choices. But that is what is gradually being eroded now by the system of anti-religion in school and anti-morality. And so everything has become a right. If a man wants to eat, like the restaurant in New York that has been authorized to sell human flesh, they will tell you that it's human right. In fact, when the Supreme Court gave him that judgment that he has the right to sell human flesh, he says he wrote on the online that he has battled this. They have battled this for 10 years about the right to eat human flesh. Now they call it human rights. Whatever somebody thinks is right, he calls it human right. And this is the trend that is going. It's a downward slope that we are going to, because we have rejected the knowledge of God. Because when God created us, he did not create us to be like the animals. That's why he gave us a conscience. And that's why he gave us a law. When you reject that law, then humans become like ordinary animals. No, their knowledge notwithstanding. The moral ingredient is removed. And society will be guided by the rule of an insane majority that call anything, any name, depends on what they want, what they think, not what some supreme standard holds. That is the problem that is plaguing the world all over, from Africa to all the advanced countries. That is the trend. Terrible things are being adopted as law. The other day, there is a state, I don't want to call the country, where they were wrestling with the law that a father can marry the daughter, incest. And people, can you imagine a whole assembly meets to make a law to debate on that? And at the end, what do? They just count the votes, yay, nay. If the yay have it, then it becomes the law. Nobody cares. And they laugh about it. They say, we just pass a new law. So that's the problem. When the majority is sick morally, and we say democracy is the way to go. If democracy is the way to go, we have to insist on the moralizing ingredient, and we have to mobilize those who are so moralized and transformed to get involved in the process. That is the will of God.
From what you're saying, Your Excellency, I now understand what you mean by democracy. That's exactly what you term as democracy, right?
Yeah,
the rule of an unethical majority for whom human rights is used as a cloak of unrighteousness.
Yes. When they tell you human rights, my human right, ask them, what do you mean by human right? Now you discover that it is actually anarchy. What I like is good for me. What you like is good for you. So allow me to do my own, you do your own. That's anarchy. So it's crazy. That's a mad society. It's a mad society where the things that they used to hold in high value just a few years ago, suddenly they throw everything into the dustbin and they say that was trash. And what do they stand for now? It's shameful. Something that they would be ashamed of, they would have been ashamed of many years ago. Today is the standard. They celebrate it as pride. And I even see some societies where everybody goes naked. There is a day that everybody has to go naked. I mean, naked to your pants, to your underpants, as you were born, the day you were born from the maternity. Then you see grown-ups, 50, 60 years, they're all naked, and they say this is naked parade. And it is, with people are everywhere excited that something great is happening. And they fill the streets, naked people. Now, and somebody authorized those kind of laws. They register those kind of organizations and rallies. They give them authorization. Why? Because there's a majority that thinks that whatever is good for you is good for you. Because there's no moral code that people can, a moral reference that people can go to and say, I think this is bad. I don't care whether my child is crying for it. this is not good for society, it's not good for our children, it's not good. This is not the kind of society we want to build. That is gradually disappearing today.
Mr. Nanchop, let me just add something to what the president is saying. If today we are living in a war of high moral decadence, and that is why I made it clear here that Aristotle said that righteousness must be the qualification for a true leader, or for any leadership, if the people must rejoice, and if we look into the world today, we discover that a lot of people promote evil than good. It is not something that is new. If we look back into the divine constitution, that is the Bible, we discover that when Jesus resurrected from death, the guards that were placed there went and told the teachers of the law, the high priest, that Jesus has resurrected, and they had to pay them to go and spread it, that his disciples came and stole him. That is, they were paying them to go and promote lies, to go and promote evil. And that is what the world is today. People invest a lot of money to promote lies, and that is why people invest a lot of money to promote evil. And that is why you find, even like we talk of the majority, that should leaders be decided by the majority, or should right or wrong be decided by the majority. If we go by that way, then we will never really know what is right or wrong, because we are living in the world where people will rather go for what is wrong, because it can give them temporal pleasure, because it can give them temporal satisfaction, but they fail to see the long-lasting impact. And that is why people choose leaders without even trying to weigh the character or the righteous qualification of that leader. They just choose leaders because maybe the leader has promised them some flashy things that is going to bring them temporal pleasure, even though most at times these leaders, when they get into the place of positions, they don't fulfill all what they said during their campaign. So I think that any leadership must first have righteousness as qualification.
But Minister Silva, now there's something the president just said, and there's something you just said that raises a question up in my mind. Nowadays people rather say, come on, it's civilization, right? We are becoming more civilized and we are becoming more tolerant. That's why we can vote some laws into action, and that's why some bills can be passed. Now, the question, what blows my mind is, what has happened? I mean, does civilization mean that morality is dead? Because it doesn't sound, it's funny, but that's the question I'm asking myself, because sometimes we hear people like what the president was saying, talking about people that can now move naked and do some kind of things. These are things that could be done some years behind. I mean, this is just an example. There are a lot of things that are being done nowadays that years behind we couldn't do them. But people will say, well, we've become more civilized, humans have become more knowledgeable and the rest. But now I want to say something to us. Listen, the propagation of the transforming beliefs of faith stands out as the best moralizing agent of our society. Just like the president
arise. Once we break the shackles of the government that's holding us back.
Our goal is to revive and implement the independence as well as restore the national and international personality and sovereignty of the former British-administered United Nations Trust Territory of the British Southern Cameroon.
You are the most lucky people in the world. No human being in this world ever caught up with his history. You are standing face to face and holding your own history in your hands. Now, what you make of it depends on what you do now.
To restore the state of Southern Cameroon, I say it clear.
The borders of Southern Cameroon are not being made now. They are borders defined by international treaties.
This country was united by a purpose. It was not one and indivisible. It was united by the will of the people of the Southern Cameroon.
And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together.
This is the center of endurance And endurance is what wins wars. Not how many people you kill, but how long can you endure? George Washington lost almost every battle he had, but he endured. He out-endured the British. And that's how the battle was won. Endurance.
By Monday, we will know whether Yaoundé controls Anglophone Cameroon or we control our country.
Businesses will not open, taxis, Benz, nobody will work, schools will not open, parents should not send their kids to school.
Every moment in the life of a nation can be seen either as the darkest moment or the brightest moment. Usually both are present, and it is our opportunity, by the way we respond, to determine what we make of it.
You must follow your decision to the logical conclusion by pulling out of Amazonia, or we have to face a liberation war.
Nothing is going to stop us. So help us God.
We'll take our country back.
Welcome back from the short musical break. Beautiful people. You know, this is a very exciting topic, and I'm feeling so blessed. Now, we'll be talking on Christians and self-defense. But of course, the question there is, why should Christians defend themselves, or what should they defend themselves from? Taking a look at the world today, it's sad to say that there is almost no hope for justice and little or no protection for the good and righteous people. I know growing as a young boy in my little village church, all the pastors and fathers they taught us was, if anything is going wrong in our life, we should pray to God. We should always hold God accountable for that. And I think this has been a very big problem in some parts of the world. That doesn't mean you don't have faith in God. But I really want to ask this question to my panelists. Your Excellency. Sir? Oh, it's like we lost the connection to the president.
I get you. What is the question?
Okay, sir, thank you. Yeah, the question was, why do you think it's necessary for Christians to engage themselves in self-defense, especially in this our dispensation?
Because it is clear the Bible does not forbid self-defense. Some people have misinterpreted 77 times 7 times. 77 times 7 times is talking about forgiveness, not self-defense. Check it. They can read the Bible for themselves. It's talking about forgiveness. All the parable that the teaching, the way Jesus was trying to pass through a message. When somebody is trying to talk to you, look at the context. Go back to the beginning and see what is he addressing. He was addressing the issue of forgiveness.
That's right.
So it advises us not to act because of anger, because of and destroy. If so, we will destroy the world, of course. Mm-hmm. But when you come to me to attack me, to destroy me, and I do an act of defending myself, there's nowhere that action is condemned by God. Because even Jesus himself practiced self-defense. Because all his disciples, every Bible scholar should read the gospel and see, all his disciples carried swords. All. What were they doing with swords? They were fishermen, basically. What were they doing with swords? What does a fisherman do with a sword, walking up and down, going from place to place with a sword? That was for their defense, for their self-defense, not just against animals, against anyone. And that is why when they were attacked, this again is recorded in the Bible. When they came for Jesus' arrest, somebody asked Jesus, he said, should we use the sword against them? That means, should we fight them? They already know that they had the sword for the purpose of fighting back, but they only needed permission at that particular instance. Do we use this? Do we take the sword against them? Jesus said no. Jesus did not say no because it was wrong to defend themselves, but just because at that particular time, unknown to the disciples, the hour for his sacrifice had come. This was the moment that he would give himself voluntarily to be sacrificed. So he did not need any defense. He did not need anybody to defend himself, defend him again. Even before Pilate, he refused to defend himself because he knew the hour for his being given up as a sacrifice had come. And Jesus said, listen, he said, if it were not so, I would have asked my Father who is in heaven to send 7 legions of angels. That would do what? That would defend me. That would destroy all these little soldiers you see here like one man. That means it's not of the time problem, if not of the plan problem, the agenda problem of God. These people are no match. I will call my Father in heaven and he will send angels. I will slaughter all of them like nothing. So this is God. This is Jesus talking, and the Christians believe he is God. So if Christ could defend himself, if it's the will of God in that particular situation, he will defend himself. If we allow his disciples, his closest aides, to defend themselves and defend and practice self-defense. Okay, do you remember that the sword, Jesus, Peter used the sword? I know that would be another question you're going to bring.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I like what you're saying.
Yes.
Speak up and listen, sir.
Yeah, Peter used the sword in self-defense and cut off the ear of the one who came to attack them. And Jesus said, take that ear and put it back, right? Put it back. In what I understand is that Peter, after doing this act, was still able to do a miracle, right? After doing this act, he was still able to do a miracle, put the ear back. Now, Jesus did not condemn him for anything. He said, put the sword back in his shelf. He didn't say throw it. If I see you having a dangerous sin, I would say put it away. I would not say keep it. Jesus said, keep the sword back. Because he was still trying to tell him that, look, I know why I must go at this time. Put the sword back. That means you will use it again, not now. You use it for another case, another occasion, not in this occasion. Put the sword back in his shelf. Then he told him that those that live by the sword die by the sword.
By the sword.
Now that message was not to Peter, because Peter does not live by the sword. He was talking to the soldiers. The soldiers live by the sword. They live by the gun. They will die by the gun. So there's no need for you in this particular circumstance to cut off their ear. That message was not to Peter. That message was talking to Peter about the soldiers. Say, don't worry, they will die. You don't take away their life, they will die. He was talking about the circumstances that Peter was using the sword. Because they are already cursed for what they are doing right now, so they will die. So don't worry about them. That was the circumstances that John was talking. So when you put all this together, I don't see anywhere that Peter was condemned for why did you use the sword? Because this is what he knew for 3 years plus that they were working together, that my disciples are armed not to attack people, but to defend us. And it was good. So for these people who come today and say, no, you should just stay there. They come to kill your people, kill your father, burn your house, rape your wife, do nothing. Just forget about, don't defend yourself. If they are coming with a sword, just lift up your hand.
Just go to church. Just go to church and pray. Go to church and pray.
That's not the will of God. No. You know, one of the names of God is Jehovah Nissi, God my banner. God is also called the God of hosts. You know what the meaning? God of hosts is the God of war. So how can God be the God of war and his children cannot make battle against unrighteousness?
Well, for too long, sir, Christians have been tamed to have the sheep or the dove mentality, forgetting to know that Jesus Christ is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Some believe we should just allow ourselves to be exploited and we have no right to self-defense, but rather we ought to pray and leave everything in the hands of God. Now, I want us to bring this down to our modern day reality too. Now, because you've given us some inspiration from the days of Jesus. Of course, we are Christians, and that's why we follow Christ and followers of Christ. But I want us to talk about our modern life. Now, looking at our modern day situation, looking at our modern times, what are the things you believe that we Christians should be defending ourselves from?
One, we should defend. The Bible says we should contend for the faith. We should fight against any attempt by organized society to bring down, to destroy our faith in God and the practice of our religion. We have to contend for that. Christians have to organize themselves to make sure that Christianity is not trampled upon. In many societies, the Muslims, where the Muslims are minority, they are not silent. Like in the United States, they are less than 3%, but they are not silent. But unfortunately, Christians, they are very silent. It is easier for in America today to trample on the rights of a Christian than to trample on the rights of a Muslim, even though the society is considered to be more than 70% Christian. So why? Because we have the Christians have to contend for their faith and their values in that society. You have to organize and be politically relevant and fight and stand for those rights. This is not very much so in the Christian societies. That's one fight we must fight. When we pray, we have to organize ourselves, because in this game of numbers, if the majority is silent, the vocal minority will prevail. Christians have to contend with anything that is coming your way to cause you bodily harm. It is not holiness to allow yourself to be stabbed, to be killed by some gangster, some criminal, because you are a Christian. That was not God's. That's not the will of God. You have to defend yourself against injustice. Injustice. Because our God is the God of justice. So we will stand against injustice, fight against injustice, and all that represents injustice. The Christian should fight against it. If you fight and even die for it, you have died for a good cause. Because our God is a God of justice.
One of the things I read from your book, sir, and I quote, "The manifestation of injustice is one of the points that Christians should fight against. This our modern generation should fight against." He said, "The problem of injustice cannot be adequately addressed without dealing with the root, which is inherited, inborn nature of sin." The second point after that is increase in crimes. I quote, "We have a choice to accept or reject the law of God in our lives, families, or society, but we don't have the choice to accept or refuse the consequences of the choices we make. You may want to share some light on that, sir.
Yes, Mr. Nightshop. You know, from the beginning, what I call the inbred sin from the beginning is the inherited nature of evil that we were born with. You don't teach a child to do evil. You teach the child how not to do evil as we're growing. We know how to fight, we know how to beat, we know how to bite, we know how to be selfish. So everything we have been taught is how not to be evil, because that's the nature we're born with. And that is the principal problem in society, the inbred sin. And society, with all its education, does not have a solution for that. They don't have any solution. The chalkboard cannot solve that problem. These days around, they tell you, psychology says, don't discipline a child, just keep on loving the child, give the child everything he wants, helping the child will grow up to be very moral and good. No, it's a lie. That inbred nature of sin is the problem of man and the problem of society, according to the Bible. Now, it takes a miracle of transformation to conquer that evil nature so that man becomes a morally good animal. And that is why I say that it takes a miracle of transformation. And that is what in Christianity you have when you honestly come to Jesus Christ. There is a miracle that takes place. It begins with forgiving the evil you have done, but the most important miracle is the transformation of the nature within that produces, because that nature is like a factory, the factory that produces the character. So when that nature is transformed, you start liking what you hated. You start hating what you like, especially anything that has to do with righteousness. So that society has not addressed that issue because they cannot address it without a spiritual transformation. And when they reject the Christianity as the transforming ingredient, the transformational ingredient that they need to use, society has been struggling to do otherwise, to pay psychiatrists, have psychiatric hospitals, increase the use of mental drugs and mental homes, and they build prisons, to contain the mess, because they don't know, they don't have the solution. People go to prison the same and come back even worse. They go in prison as bad people, they come back as bad, evil champions. And then in a few years, they still go back again. They send them to mental homes, they give them drugs, put them, sedate them every day. They still are the same. Society does not have a solution to that problem. The only solution we have is God. And that is the problem that democracy is handling. Because when they reject the wisdom of God and they depend on the wisdom of man, and the wisdom of man doesn't have the core solution to the problem of man, which is evil within, society will be degraded and will be going down the drain morally. That is the problem I call the main problem of organized society today.
Your Excellency, because of time, I want to ask you one more question. I know you'll be leaving us shortly while I continue with Minister Silva. But now, from the book, there are two more points I really want to emphasize, dear televiewers. Now, I can't overemphasize for you to get this book. And believe me, I'm not going to go into details because I want you to have some ingredients from the book, some things from the book for yourself. Now, you talked about why we should fight against, why we should defend ourselves, why Christians should be able to fight and defend themselves. One of the things you talked about is to fight against exploitation and also to fight against the violation of their human rights. Please, I want you to share some light on that.
Yes. It is not enough to disagree with somebody who is actually trampling on your values. You have to know how to play the game and deny him that right to do so. You have to deny him the right to do so. Christians should not just be a people that are organized and praying and in a waiting room to go to heaven. We have to live in this world. That's why Jesus said we are in the world. If we deceive ourselves that we are no more in this world, it means that we are living in denial. We are in this world. We must organize ourselves to make sure that we promote our values. Every Christian should be a value voter in political times. He has to organize in order to promote the values and those who will promote those values in government. You see, some people chose people to be their leaders just because they are nice, they are good looking, just because they come from their tribe, just because they have their color or skin color. No, Christians don't do that. Christians should be value voters. We should organize. We should join campaigns. We should promote candidates. We should even launch candidates into the political scenes who promote our values, who will be there to defend the fact that abortion is a sin and a crime against man and against God. And they will stand by those values. Those are the people who will promote, who will see the teaching of religion to our children not as a crime, not as a setback, but as a morally good thing to do. So we have to organize, but unfortunately we don't have Christian pressure groups enough. We don't have Christian community groups that mobilize. And the church that is the number one community group in every environment is completely uncommitted to these things because of a false theology that they should not be engaged. The church would have been the number one organized community that will educate the people, mobilize them, so that they will stand up for their rights. So that because politicians respond to numbers, they respond to pressure. They don't do anything without pressure. If you have your right and it's being trampled upon and you do nothing, politicians will not help you. If you stand out and take a public position and pressure them, they will yield to your pressure. They will do what you have to do. But when the moral majority is silent, when morality is being trampled upon by a crazy majority, then they will still do nothing. So Christianity, the will of God is that many people will believe the Lord Jesus Christ, their lives will be changed, their lives will be transformed, but they have to organize themselves to promote what the values they stand for, which will make society a better place. Right. And then those in power will yield to that pressure. And some that are, and those that are transformed also will rise to those positions and promote those values. We have to be value-minded. We have to be value-oriented. We have to vote values. We don't have to vote persons only. We have to vote values. Those who promote those values. Right. If wherever we have the numbers, it's a mistake if the laws don't reflect our numbers. The laws must reflect the values of our numbers. That means the Christians are awake.
Thank you so much for that, Your Excellency. We are going to let you go. Before we let you go, I want to read one thing from the book, and shortly we'll be having the musical break. And of course, dear televiewers, stay online because Minister Silva and myself will be coming back to analyze most of the things we've been discussing with the president, and of course, to give you some highlights from the book. Now, one of the things I want to read from the book, under the point of exploitation, Your Excellency, which you mentioned, you see, talking about exploitation, Exploitation is the child of greed and wickedness. It's a where people are not taught to fear God, morality will reduce to the fear of limited morals. I'm sorry, of limited mortals, eye service, or the rule of the jungle. Now, under human rights violations, which is a topic I personally really endorse, which is a point I personally really endorse, is that corrupt men have no respect for fellow humankind. That's a striking statement. Your Excellency, I want you to use 1 minute and round this up for us. You know, we've been talking about the Christian, politics, and self-defense. And of course, I'm so inspired when I read the things you've written in this book. That's why I'm emphasizing that others get this book and get the idea in the book. But I just want you to give us the roundup statement on, I know I asked the question before, but I'm going to post it around this time again in a different way. Round it up for us why you think is so definite, why it's so necessary that in this our modern day, we are not just going to be dormant and quiet and say, well, we are Christians, we should only pray to God, we should do nothing, and we allow the society to be corrupt and destroyed by evil men, forgetting to know that the foundations they build today on wrong principles will affect the future of our generation, of our children too. So you may want to give us a recap on why you definitely think it's necessary for Christians to get involved in the system and, of course, fight to defend their Christian values.
Democracy is a system of representation. So we have to make sure that we are represented. We don't just have to belong and be affected by the laws that organized society is meting down on us. We have to make sure that we are represented. That means there must be a conscious decision to get involved. A conscious choice we have to make from the pulpit to the pews to make sure that we are represented. Our own are also amongst the candidates. That those who reflect and defend our values, they need not be some people from some monasteries or some Bible schools, no. People that defend our values. I look at somebody like President Donald Trump. I don't think he fits the definition of what I know as a transformed Christian because of many things you read about him here and there. But as a Christian voter, as a Christian leader, I am more concerned clearly about those who will defend my values. If you make a promise to me and I know that you will defend my values, you will stand for them when I need you to stand for me. In politics, you have to have representatives who represent you. Even if you don't agree with me in total, if you will represent my values, I'll vote you, because you're not just going there to represent yourself, you're going to represent something. So because corruption is responsible for the evils we have in society. I mean, a moral corruption and all kinds of corruption, spiritual corruption, material corruption. These are responsible for the ills we suffer in society. Even the wars you see are because of corruption. The violation of human rights is because of corruption. The killings, maimings, and kidnappings because of corruption. Politics have become so dirty, so terrible because of corruption. People are corrupted in high places. Some people say something today and say something tomorrow because of corruption. So I believe that this is the time we should have people who are ready, who are incorruptible, who have taken a public position, who have the power within, and who have the courage to stand for those values for society, and they are incorruptible by the corrupt society. If we don't have those in place, then there will be no way to stop the evil that plagues the rest of us. We have to have people who cannot be bribed, who cannot be deceived, who cannot be not deceived, who cannot be corrupted in their thought process, in their judgment, for whom good is good and bad is bad, for him right is right and wrong is wrong. That is what the Christian that fears God more than man can bring. So I believe that if these kind of people rise in authority, the Bible says the people will rejoice. Because sometimes the people easily get forgotten because they don't have, once they have made a decision, they don't have power over the one they have decided. So they decided for. And that person is subject to bombarded by all kinds of corrupt influences. But if it's somebody that is a champion for his values, and he believes and cannot be corrupted, then you can go to bed and know that it will be done. It is possible that even if the body has died, if the head is not yet dead, that person is not declared dead. The brain must die.
That's right.
So at least when the head cannot be corrupted, it's a good place to be. There's hope for society. When those in leadership are not subject to the corruption of criminals and the morally corrupt in our world, then society has hope. But when the head is rotten, when the head is corrupt and can easily be corrupted, what is the hope for those who look up to the head so that for their values to be defended, for their values to be preserved? That's the biggest question. Thank you very much, Mr. Nanchop. Thank you very much, Mr. Silva. I look forward to coming here, being here again with you. I will also recommend some other people from around the globe who have read this book. Some of them were itching after the first edition. They called me. They said, oh, somebody said he has read this book 5 times. So he said, oh, can they allow me come over there and then let me just tell them what I have learned as a good student? I said, I will tell the producers, maybe they would like to bring you on board. So thank you very much.
Your Excellency, before we forget, that is the book that also opened the door in Brazil.
Correct.
Yes. The Brazilians were so smart to translate the book in their language. And I think that's one of the first countries that have translated a book in their language, right?
Yes. I went there. I was basically launching the book, and some leaders came around, some Christian leaders, big churches in their thousands. They came around, and some political leaders amongst them. And after listening to some of these things, the Spirit of God called them out to step out for something, which is what I call the defense of their values. They should forget about my call or where I'm coming from. It's a matter of right and wrong, and to defend their values. I say if they do this, they will be doing the right thing, defending the values that they are called Christian values, the right and the wrong, the truth and the lie. Defend what you know is correct. So they decided to do even beyond. A lot of things are already happening, and I know that let's get this translated to many other languages. Let the people help us do so. Go and subscribe to ABC, and I will make a promise that those people who will go and subscribe to ABC, I will give a gift. I will give a gift to all of them of one free copy of the book. So I think ABC will go ahead. I spoke to the leadership of ABC yesterday, and that is the consensus. So I will give the first 900 people who rush to there to go and subscribe to help the revolution and our restoration quest, a free book. Whatever they will pay for their first subscription will be used as mailing to mail the books to them. God bless you.
Wow.
And may God save Ambazonia.
Thank you so much. That's so exciting. Of course, hey, dear televiewers, you've gotten from the horse's mouth. The president is giving out this book for free. I mean, the only requirement is for you to subscribe to the ABC Amber Club. Oh my goodness. In fact, this night I need to sleep. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Now, dear televiewers, thank you so much for being with us. I mean, that has been the President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia with us. We are going to have a short musical break right now. And when we come back, we'll be analyzing some few facts from the book of the President together with Minister Silva. Stay tuned on ABC Amber TV. Thank you.
Welcome back, televiewers, from the musical break. We've heard a lot with respect to Christian politics and self-defense. We've heard from the president himself with saying a lot of things, drawing inspiration from the book he wrote, and we have been inspired, especially those who are out there thinking that Christians should not participate in politics and in other things in life. I believe now, I think by virtue of what has been discussed in this program, I think that mentality is changing. And Mr. Nanchop, when the president was talking about Christians involving in politics and what the world thinks about, and the complaints, the complacency, and the way Christians themselves are passive when it comes to Christianity, I had this in mind because when you look, for example, when God created the world, God actually placed Adam and Eve in the Bible, and God did not tell them to sleep and things will happen. He assigned them to work. He said, go and beautify the garden. So I don't know where Christians came up with this mentality that they just have to sit and maybe pray and things will happen. What do you think about that?
One thing about life is that we live in the world of spiritism, and of course, we can't deny the fact that we were created in the image of God. Being created in the image of God, one of the things that God gave us is the ability to dominate. Of course, he said, go and dominate the earth. So dominion is the heritage of the righteous in the original state we had with God before man sinned. Talking about Christocracy, which is the rule of the righteous, who are governed by the internal, or who are internally governed by the word of God. After man's sin, of course, man became short of the glory of God, but that's the reason why Christ came. Don't forget, he is called the second Adam. So he came to restore that connection that was lost back to God, giving us the ability to dominate and rule. If you read in the book, in the Bible, you see, he said, I've given you power to trample upon principalities and powers. Now, what am I trying to talk about? I'm trying to talk about dominating. So, now, why am I given the ability to dominate and to make changes and effects when I don't need it? I believe that God has put us in this earth. He has given us the ability to effect changes. Most Christians believe that they just have to stay quiet and pray, and that's all they can do. Now, the problem I have with that is this, Minister Silva. Problems that are caused by ignorance cannot be solved by prayers.
That's right.
That's a statement of fact. So, due to the fact that we are ignorant of our responsibilities, we are ignorant of that which have been given to us to take charge of, all we do is to go and pray and pray and pray. Listen, I know I'm talking now. Somebody might be thinking, hey, what is he trying to talk about? Listen, I'm a Christian. It will shock you to know that I graduated from a theological college. I attended the Rhema Bible College. And another thing I need to make very clear to those who are listening to me to understand is that from child, I grew in a staunch Christian home. So I know a lot of myths in Christianity. Talking about you just have to allow yourself being used, not taking charge of your life and things that concerns you. You just have to pray to God. Is what is killing Africa. Because there are a lot of things that are happening to us. We allow the enemy to just misuse us. They exploit us. And all we think is just to pray. I think there's something wrong with that ideology.
That's right, Mr. Nancho.
Thank you, sir. You want to say something?
Yeah, that is right. I just want to, chip into what you're saying, because, the Bible says that you shall know the truth, and the truth, shall set you free. Some versions say the truth shall make you free. So it is the knowledge of the truth that frees somebody. It's not all about prayer. And how do you get to know the truth? You get to know the truth by making research, and that is what has been lacking in the Christian fold, because Christians have substituted, some of these things for prayer. Christians just believe that prayer can answer every, question or problem we are facing in life. I believe that prayer is just a key. And just take, for example, that the Republic launched a war against us, Mr. Nancho, and people are expecting us to sit and just be praying that God will jump down from heaven and do it. No, God uses human beings to accomplish, his divine assignment on earth. That is why God placed us on earth as human beings who are created in his image. So God is not going to jump down from heaven to come and do what, we have to do. But the key thing is, like, whenever we embark on anything, like David said when he confronted Goliath, he said, I come to you in the name of the Lord. Mr. Nancho, let me ask you a question. Was David saying that with an empty hand?
No.
He had a weapon in his hand.
He had a weapon in his hand to defend the children of Israel, the people of God. Mr. Silva, let me say something to that. One of the biggest problems, I personally have a problem with a lot of ideologies with which some of us grew with, and that has plagued our society. And this is sad, because it has led Africa as a continent to be so backward in a lot of things. Now, I'll give you a simple example. Somebody will tell you, well, this and that is not the will of God. Firstly, we need to know what is the will of God. The will of God is not that anybody should perish. It is not the will of God that some people should be suffering and some are enjoying. This life is a gift God has given us. And believe me, excuse me, sir, believe me, if we all will live with obeying the basic commandments he gave us, love one another, we will not exploit one another. We will not kill one another. I want us to read something. I want to quote a point that came from what I got from the president's book, but I want to use it to explain something. He said, the propagation of the transforming beliefs of faith stands out as the best moralizing agent of our society. Now, talking about self-defense, Minister Silva, one of the points you made mention of earlier was we need to defend ourselves from the manifestation of injustice. We live in a world where there is a lot of injustice in this world, my brother. Let's take the Ambazonian. Let's look at Ambazonia. Look at what I don't understand is, how would the world be silent seeing how they are killing innocent people of Ambazonia, burning houses and villages, and they are just quiet. And Ambazonians themselves, some of them thinking just, well, we are Christians, we should just follow us and allow occultics, people who sold out their souls to the devil, to maim us, kill us, destroy our people, destroy our properties, and all the things we should do because we are Christians. Yes, because we are Christians. We should not do anything. We should not retaliate. We should be quiet and pray. No, I want you to think about it. When I was growing, somebody told us that no, Christians should not join the army. It's not right for the Christian to become a police. It's not right. So these are the things that plague the society. And let me tell you something. It's sad to say that that country could only go down to this level because the Christians allowed it. My brother, imagine you had Christians, and I'm talking about faithful Christians who are police people, who will not break your car to collect bribe from you, but who will do their job out of a clean conscience. Imagine you had a country that was being led by somebody who fears God and who has respect for human lives. He will not declare war on people who are fighting for a just cause.
That's right.
Imagine you had people who had living conscience, people who had a judging and living conscience, ruling and leading that country. We will not get to where we are right now. Remember that all these things started when the lawyers and the teachers went to the street, demanding for their basic human rights to be respected, demanding for what is just. Now, we've had a lot of manipulation, and that country, it's sad to see how the devil, it is a proof to show that the devil has taken hold of the hearts of the leaders of that country. How could that come into play? A country where until you belong to a certain sect, until you sell your soul to the devil, until you make human sacrifices, you cannot get into position of leadership. You see, we've lost it. And this is what we are correcting.
That's right.
And that's why we are saying that, listen, we will not romance with that old system. We are cutting out of it, and Ambazonia is going to be a country that will be built upon righteousness and sound judgment.
That's right. And that is why, Mr. Nanchop, if we look at this crisis going on in Ambazonia, we wouldn't have even gotten to this level if those, that are in the judiciary, those that are in the legislature, and those that are, in the executive arm of the government of La Republic had righteousness, as a standard. If they had righteousness as a qualification, I don't believe we would have even gotten to this level of talking about separation. But it's because those people, they lack, these moral qualifications. And that is why it is essential, like the president rightly said in his book, let the righteous many step out. This is the time where Christians, this is a time where Christians must begin to take responsibility, in certain areas, to do things and not just sit and complain and think that evil or secular people are the ones, to be in certain domains in life. No, we are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Salt gives, taste. It gives like a kind of flavor, and we are the light. So we are not called to sit and watch things happen, but we are called to be the ones to influence and champion every positive thing we want to see happen, in our political systems and in other domains in life. And so Christians must not think that being part of these different domains is actually a crime. When it going back to self-defense, Mr. Nanchop, I just want to read something from the Bible. I call it the Divine Constitution, and then you will share with us your opinion, and you will share with our viewers your opinion. That is Luke 22:36. And this was Jesus saying, he said to them, but now if you have a purpose, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Sorry, let me take it again. He said to them, but now if you have a purse, take it and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. That was Jesus talking to his disciples, advising them, telling them, of the necessity to get a sword, Mr. Nanchop. And this, if we read back to the preceding, verses, we'll discover that Jesus was saying this as a result of, the conspiracy that the teachers of the law and the high priest, they had to kill him. And so at one point, Jesus, could discern that he was approaching a time where his disciples, need to be armed and alert. And he made this statement. So what can you say about this?
Minister Silva, I believe so much that we are the custodians of our lives. When we allow others to make decisions for us, we will suffer the consequences of those decisions. I believe that we indirectly have the power and ability through democracy to influence situations around us. Failing to do so will lead us into the pit. Now, talking about exploitation. Exploitation is the child of greed and wickedness. Corrupt men will always look for a system to beat laws that they cannot keep. Politicians and economic leaders will always pretend in the eyes of the people as though they're helping them. Now, let me give you a good example at La Republique. Look at those who are going now and saying they want to go for, how do they call it, campaign in Ambazonia. As though they care about the people. What are they going to campaign there? As though they care about the people. These are people whose houses have been burned, whose families have been killed. Most of them are in exile. And then none of these so-called politicians have the guts to even talk about that, not even in their parliament. But because they want to externally show to the world that, oh, we are okay, we are still one, things are still okay, they are pretending and trying to develop shields to go there as though the concern, as though they are, the people's plight is of great concern to them, as though the people's life is of great concern to them, just because they want their votes. That's exploiting the people. That's greed and wickedness in manifestation. I mean, I believe that those things can only happen to you when you tolerate them. Those things can only happen to a people who tolerate them. That's why I believe the people have the right to resist all such things. Many activists have been coming online and they are saying that Ambazonians should not allow any of such La Republique election to take place in Ambazonia, which is true. To me, it's an insult to the people of Ambazonia. You are exploiting the people and you only come to them when you want something from them. Let's talk about violation of human rights. Don't you think it's right for every human being to stand and defend themselves against their rights being violated? Of course, even at the United Nations Charter, it is right for each and every one of us to defend ourselves. It's instinctive. For me to defend myself, if I see someone come with a knife to shoot, I would definitely want to react somehow towards it. You know, Christians who just think, no, you just have to pray and allow everything for God to take control. I mean, I wonder where they get that ideology from. I personally believe we must fight against the violation of our human rights. And that's why I'm 100. Listen, these are the motivations of why most of us are in this struggle. Because we cannot just sit quiet and see injustice being the order of the day. Something must be changed. And because we've seen how corrupt the system of La Republique is, we've judged it, and we've seen that talking with them will not even bring anything. Trying to educate them will not even bring anything. I mean, you know, there's a stage where you go beyond repentance. La Republique has gone beyond repentance. That's why I don't see any future of La Republique and Ambazonia together. There is nothing you can convince me of that Ambazonia and La Republique will ever be one people in the future. I don't see the possibility, not in 100 years. So I don't even, I think it's a waste of time thinking of talking about trying to make some settlements and arrangement for the two people. No, it cannot fit. There is no compatibility of the two. Because the system, listen, the darkness and light can never live together. No matter how you might want one peace, one unity, but darkness and light can never be united. La Republique is darkness, Ambazonia is light. And I think Christians have the right to defend themselves against human rights violations. Another point I can bring up is, look at the world. We have a lot of economic crimes in the world. Don't you see this manipulation system where, come on, are we so blind? Look at Francafrique. France will only use its system of manipulation in Africa because the Africans are tolerating it. You have people in power or in places of position of in positions of power, of leadership, who have sold their human rights, they have sold their soul to France and to other countries to exploit us. Don't you think now let me ask you this question, Mr. Silva. Look at each of the countries in Africa that have been indirectly manipulated and exploited by external powers, be it China, be it France, be it England, be it whatsoever. If you look at those they use, they are those in power. And sometimes there are just few of them. It's just about 50 people. They will bribe these people. They will get these people on their sides. And then through the rulership of these people, they will exploit the land. The millions are suffering.
That's true, Mr. Nancho.
But
and that is why there is
stand and resist. out of power.
Yeah.
They will take
Yeah.
they will take charge of their lives. They will take charge of their resources. They will take control of that which belongs to them. So you have a few majority sitting up there controlling. These people, the population know they are wrong, they know what they are doing is wrong, but they don't have the courage and the boldness to oppose them, because some of them will say, no, we are peaceful people, we should just be peaceful. Peaceful, and you are dying. I think it's your right to stand and speak out and defend yourself against such people. So for Christians to think, no, we are good people, we should just pray and allow everything to God, it's wrong. I personally think it's wrong.
And Mr. Nanchop, you have just made me, to ponder upon this, which I think it is, a call for every Christian in such a time like this, not just in, Ambazonia, but in Africa as a whole. Because if you look into the Bible, when things went wrong, those that stood up boldly to speak were not secular people or unbelievers. They were Christians, they were prophets. For example, when King Nebuchadnezzar, was passing a lot of decrees that were against, God's principles, who stood up against Nebuchadnezzar? It was Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Those were, people that were, carried the spirit of God in them, and they stood up against the evil regime of King Nebuchadnezzar. Look at Pharaoh, when Pharaoh was, maltreating the Israelites, and kept them in bondage. Yeah, who stood up? It was Moses. It was, a righteous person. Look at David. When David, slept with Bathsheba, which was illegal. It was not his wife. Who was the person that rebuked him? It was, a prophet called Nathan in the Bible. Yeah, exactly. So Christians have always been the one that step out to rebuke evil, especially when it comes to government. But I don't know why in this generation, a lot of, Christians think that we should just sit back and watch evil prevail. That is witchcraft. As Christians, we are light, and we cannot sit and, Mr. Nanchop, if you go to La Republique, you will find a lot of men of God. I'm not saying this to offend anybody, who are very quiet, irrespective of all the evil that is going on, in La Republique and what La Republique is doing in Ambazonia, just because they are so much afraid that if they speak, the regime is going to, ban their churches, and that is where, we really see, some loopholes when it comes to, these people, these men of God or Christianity in La Republique or in Cameroon.
Minister Silva,
yeah,
one of the strategy of evil people and evil regimes and evil leaders is the strategy of terrorism, of terror. Now, sometimes I feel like the world has lost their senses, because we have mystified what terrorism is. Now, if I'm a leader today and I terrorize people not to speak up their minds, I mean, if you have any, like that, you have a country like La Republique. If you are a journalist and you report anything against the government, you'll be terrorized and put in jail. If you report things, evil acts of the government, remember there is this lady who is now in England, I guess, they call her Mimi Mefo, because she was reporting about the Ambazonia revolution. They had to put her in jail. They terrorized her, and she had a lot of traits of her life. Now, the question here is, who is the terror? Yeah. You see the government perpetrating these acts of terrorism against people, and yet calling them terrorists.
Mr. Nanchop, let me just take for example, when you get to that level with your walk with God, whereby you have decided, to stand out for the truth, I think we don't even have to be, like, for example, this Ambazonian revolution, there are a lot of people out there, even in the diaspora, who carry the truth. They know the truth, but they can't even come out and put their faces, on the spotlight like we are doing, but they carry, they know that what is happening in Ambazonia is evil, by La Republique.
That's right.
So the Bible says that the righteous are bold as lions, Mr. Nanchop.
Lion.
So it doesn't it doesn't matter. Look like people like Ezekiel in the Bible. They stood and spoke against evil kings. You know, they didn't even, there was a time that Ezekiel was put down in a system and locked, you know, for days just because he was against the king. You understand? But I just believe that standing out and stepping out as Christians to speak the truth, irrespective of what you go through, will be rewarding before God and even before man. That is why, you know, I hear some of the people who were on ground zero and could step out, you know, and still speak. Did they die? For example, you know, even the person you cited, Mimi Mefo, she stepped out and she spoke a lot of things. The Republic could only terrorize her by, you know, picking her up and putting her in jail. But, you know, God will always defend people like that. I believe God will always defend people who step out to fight evil. You know, and that is what the church is supposed to be doing, Mr. Nan. Not just praying, sitting and praying and thinking that, you know, by prayers, Bia will stop from killing, you know, people. It doesn't work that way.
You are saying exactly what I was saying. You see, that's why I was saying that one of the strategies of the devil, of Satan, is to input fear in people's heart. Now, I'm ashamed of those men of God, of those so-called, I'll put in quote, men of God, pastors, fathers, reverends, imams. Let me put those who are in Ambazonia. They are seeing how the people for whom God has sent them to service are dying and are being killed and are being destroyed, and yet they have no boldness. They don't have the courage to stand up and speak against it. One of the things that really shocked me, I remember last year at the United Nations Security Council in New York, there was a father or a reverend who was there. I expected this guy to speak up his mind and report the things that are happening. They gave him an opportunity to speak, but you could see this guy. He was in terror. He was in fear. He could not speak, even though he was not in Cameroon. But he could not speak. He was afraid that if he say the truth, if he reports the truth, he goes back, they will kill him. Now the point is, Jesus said, "Don't be afraid of those who can kill your body and they cannot kill your soul." I wonder if some of these so-called men of God, they read their Bibles and they understand the belief in this Bible. Because God has told you, fear not. Fear is not of God. The Bible says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of courage, boldness, and of a sound mind. So
that's right.
Me seeing so many Christians, I believe so many Christians are not being audible and they are not taking the boldness to talk against what is happening, even in their country. It's because of fear. They've been terrorized by the bad people in the system, by the evil people in the system, the evil ones who have given themselves to the devil and who are being led by the enemy, and they're in charge of the system. And you see the problem. This is the problem we are having, because you have the evil people there at the top making the laws, controlling, terrorizing the society, and doing whatsoever they want to do and going free. And yet the Christians feel all they can do is should go and sit and pray. My brothers and sisters, how did we ever get here? The question I'm asking myself was, how did we ever get here?
Mr. Nanchob, I think most Christians and men of God should go and read the book of Jeremiah and see what Jeremiah went through, you know, just because he stood up and, you know, speak against evil governments and even evil in the church. He was bold enough to even speak say some of the things you and I were saying here. You know, he stood up and spoke even against men of God, you know, who were not doing things the right way. And so that is the kind of spirit Christians should carry. You know, it's not we shouldn't have any spirit of complex. The God we serve is not a God of complex. You know,
that's
so
right.
we should be
man of God. You know, we can talk about this thing, Minister Silva. You know, we can talk about this thing again and again and again. I can't overemphasize on this. I've had friends call me something I've backslided because, no, I'm serious. Let's be factual. Something you have backslided because you are standing up for justice. Something you are no more a Christian because you are standing up for justice. Let me tell you something. Some have called you, they will say, this and that. Now, what they fail to understand is when injustice prevails, justice dies. But our God is a God of justice. If you are a servant of God, you will represent the values of God, and you will represent the word of God. You will preach the word of God. You will stand for the word of God. You will stand for that which is right and correct. I cannot fold my arms, and that's my motivation. And see the devilish soldiers, thugs, and evil people of La Republique go and kill our people, burn grandmothers in their houses, kill children as young as baby matter. And all you want me to do about it is just to sit quiet and say, God is in control. I think I have the right to go and meet those committers of such crimes and tell them, listen, what you are doing is wrong. And preach. I'm expecting to see men of God take their Bibles and march into it and open it and preach to there. I'm expecting to see men of God, those who call themselves pastors, to take Atanganji and the rest, put them down and preach to them and make deliverance and deliver, lay their hands on them. All those men of God who say they are anointed, and they are anointed, they think that, listen, the anointing cannot protect them from the evil one. They think their own anointing is just to come and lay hands on people in churches and then tell them to pay tithes and then tell them to sow seeds. If there are men of God who think they are anointed in that country, I want to see them start coming up. They will be backed by the anointing for standing for the truth. If your own anointing is to stay within a building and lay hands on people and push them to fall on the ground and collect money from them as seeds and tithes, then you have no anointing. That's the anointing of the belly. Because if you care about the people whom God created in his image, he loves people he has designed, he has given this free gift of life to, then you will fight for those people. You will preach the word of God to them, you will protect them. And if you listen, David was there, and when he saw the lion came to eat his father's sheep, what did he do? He fought the lion and killed the lion.
That's right.
And the Lord says, take care of my sheep. My brother, let's run up for today. You know, we can't. I mean, this topic is a hot topic. And if I'm talking, talking about it, it makes me boil from inside because I can't just understand a lot of things.
Thank you, Mr. Nanchop. Thank you, televiewers, for watching this edition of the Hour of Grace on ABC Amber Television. And we've been talking of the Christian politics and self-defense. And I want to reiterate that Christians have the right to be in politics and to be leaders, and Christians don't just have the right, they are called and mandated to be the salt and the light of the world and to dominate. And so Christians should not shy away from stepping into some of these domains in life to cause a change, a positive change. So thank you very much for watching this edition. Mr. Nanchop, do you have any last word for our televiewers?
I just want to round up by encouraging you, the televiewers, and those of you who are by any means listening to this video, be it through Facebook, by satellite, or on YouTube. Listen, stand for that which is just. Stand for that which is right. Stand for humanity. I owe a duty to fight against human violence, human exploitation, economic exploitation, to fight against the increase of crime in our society. And I believe so much that if we have to change our generation by the power of God given to us and bestowed to us as Christians, then we must take responsibility and take charge of our society. We cannot allow the society to be ruled by evil men and expect a different or a positive result. If the evil are in charge, then we'll have only evil things happening around us. But if we want to see positive things, then we have to step up, take charge, and effect a change. Prayer is good, but it's not enough. When you pray, you need to act by faith and act accordingly. And I think taking charge of that which is being put under your custody, under your jurisdiction, under your authority, is not a sin. And protecting the weak, helping the less privileged or the underprivileged, helping the poor, I don't think it's a sin. That's, of course, the reason for which Christ came. or one of the reasons, I would rather say. So, well, this is Hour of Grace. We always bring you inspirational thoughts from the Bible. And thank you, Minister Silva. It's always a blessing to work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Nanchop, and goodbye.
Goodbye.